Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rutland Town Planning Commission. This is April 1st, 2021. And we're going to start our meeting off tonight with a public hearing on a subdivision in town, subdivision number 311, I believe.
Correct.
And this is Velco is purchasing some property from the Thomas Dairy family for some modifications and additions coming up in the future. So the public hearing is now open. If there is anyone in the audience here, Dennis or Ernie or Chris, who would like to speak or ask questions, we have a couple representatives here from Velco as well. So the floor is open to the public.
All right, this is Dennis. I guess the biggest question I have is what is the intention? I didn't know that Velco was buying this property. I thought it was just dividing up to be selling off in different lots, but what is Velco's intention?
Okay.
Question.
Sure. Sandy, are you still, or Doug, are you still on the call? Which?
Do you want to answer, Sandy? Do you want me to?
Oh, go ahead, Doug. If you mess up, I'll finish.
All right, perfect. So we have a substation upgrade we're planning to do at our substation, and we really don't own a lot of property there today. And our project's not going to be till next year. We're going to be putting in a new control building, and there'll be a small fence expansion that occurs there. There'll be a formal 248 filing with the Public Utility Commission. But essentially the property was for sale, and we saw the opportunity because we don't own a lot of land there. So we thought this would be an opportunity for us to purchase the property for anything that might come up in the future. But presently, that land that's on the east side there, we don't really have any plans for it at the present time. Our transmission line passes through the middle of it, and like I said, that was it was for sale. That and the portions on the west side and the south, we're just buying them because the property was available.
Another question. Velco puts a lot of restrictions on us. Half of my property I can't do anything with because it's within 75-foot line. So
I see. Yeah.
Can Velco change the rules in the future? And let's say they want to put in a whole bunch of solar panels underneath their transmission lines. Option ever, since in the same area, I'm not allowed to put up any kind of a permanent structure, not a shed or anything. So along those lines, is Velco also restricted from putting up like whatever they want underneath their transmission lines, like solar panels? I would think
I can
not.
answer that one, Douglas.
Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, Velco, those easements were from back in the 50s when Velco was born. And they do restrict any construction of any kind of building or obstruction within the right of way to protect, first of all, to protect safety, because you don't want to be putting your house underneath energized high voltage lines. But we do restrict structures and things. We can allow gardens. We've allowed driveways to cross, underground utilities after they're reviewed with Velco. But Velco's right-of-way usage policy restricts, prevents, or prohibits solar panels in the right-of-way. We have no intention at this point, and I can't imagine in the future, of putting solar panels in our rights-of-way. It would impede our travel for maintenance. It would be impossible to control vegetation unless we had goats out there. But that's just something that we don't allow the public, and we don't intend to put any of that in ourselves within the boundaries of the easement, the right of way. So you won't be seeing that there.
That's probably a perfect answer. That was my biggest concern with
Okay, yeah.
breaking up the Thomas land. My biggest concern, I think we all have concerns in Vermont about somebody plopping down giant, plots of solar panels all over the place. But if Velco can't change the rules and can't put structures underneath their power lines, then it will stay as pristine as it is now with nothing there, just open meadows and fields, right?
Right. That's actually one of the reasons we decided to jump in and put an offer on this land, because we know there were other solar projects planned and proposed for that came before the Planning Commission. And we said, well, we don't want to be limited to 1.3 acres down there when it's a really important substation for us. Even if we expand, it's just going to be a little bit beyond the existing fence, but we didn't want someone else coming in with our transmission lines traveling through most of the property we're buying, ours and Green Mountains. So we just thought it was a sort of a safety factor and a buffer to keep it that way.
So we did receive the letter, and it described all the property lines that butt up against these lots that are being divided. I guess my question is, what section is Velco actually going to purchase? Certainly not the entire piece that
Correct.
goes all the way down the hill. So what is Velco purchasing? Do you know the lines?
Yes, I don't know if I have the ability to share my screen or if Bill Sweet can pop up the first page.
I'm working on that.
Subdivision plan. So
Just a
Mr.
second.
Wilberg, before we even came into the picture, when the Thomas family sold the land to the Armed Forces Reserve Center, they did their own subdivision, and it was mostly a east-west subdivision of the nearly 90 acres, half and half sort of. And neither one of those existing parcels suited us. We said we'd rather have the area along Post Road. So we hired a surveyor to simply redraw the subdivision lines and have this subdivision map now recorded with the town, so that we are buying everything in there that's shaded. That's already, our lines go through by your house and then out in that wetland area as it gets towards Route 7. That's totally encumbered. That's 5 acres worth there, totally encumbered by ours and Green Mountain Power's line. So we're just buying that to own it in fee, because the rest of the land really wasn't as important to us as the area near our substation. So that's 30, almost 32 acres out of the 87 or nearly 90 that they own. They still own everything else to the south of that.
Do you see that, Mr. Wilberg? Do you see the?
I do. I took my
Survey.
glasses off so I can see. I have I can feel the radiation coming off the screen. I'm so close to it, but I'm trying to be as positive as I can, and I'm wanting to say that by Velco taking over this piece of land, I really don't have any future worries that someone else is going to come in and develop the area. So I'm, again, trying to be very positive. I think this is a good thing for us. As long as no structures go in, we're good.
Okay. Mr. Seward, did you have some questions or comments?
No, Dennis has pretty well covered it.
Okay. And I don't know if Chris Howland, or if you're still in the meeting.
No, I'm just observing. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Chris.
You know, I do have one more question that just came up. Since Velco is going to own this piece of property, does that mean that the Thomas family will no longer be using that as farmland, will no longer be putting in cornfields? And if
I
they,
don't- I don't
if they
know.
don't, is that land available for us to use for gardening?
I haven't thought about that, actually. We do have areas where we've given licenses to hay to various farmers who we actually find they do us a service by keeping brush out of the property that Velco owns. The Thomases haven't approached us with any desire to farm that or hay that or plant it with corn. So I don't know. And I certainly would have to ask management whether you could use it for a garden. The corner of your land is, there's not much room. I mean, you would be in the right of way with a garden. And, you know, anytime we had to go up there with trucks and equipment, we would be impacting your garden. So
Well, I'm not,
I don't know what to tell you there.
yeah, I'm not talking just about myself.
Okay.
I'm talking about all of us that live along the line.
Oh,
I know that some do use some of Thomas's land, but with permission to do some gardening up the hills and all. And if this was no longer being used by Thomas, it would be certainly a great convenience if those that lived along this line could use some of that already prepared field.
yeah, there's that upper plateau area.
Yeah. So yeah, if you could get back to us and let us know if you have any like permissions without getting licenses or without, you know, if we can just use the land for gardening purposes and, you know, maintain it in that manner.
Mhm.
That would be really beneficial for those that live along that line.
Okay, I can ask.
Otherwise, it's just going to grow with just weeds and brush and you're going to have to maintain it. You're going to have to, you know, come in and mow it and clean it every couple of years. And, yeah, and we certainly don't want a lot of herbicides being used in here. So yeah, if you could get, if it's a possibility,
Mhm.
that would be a great symbiotic relationship.
Okay, Mr. Wilberg, what's your phone number?
802-775-0989.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Great questions, conversation here. Any other comments? Okay, I'll thank you, Bill, for putting the survey up. So I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this point.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Thank you,
I
Hunter.
second that.
All right. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Thank you very much, everyone. And Velco folks will be voting on the subdivision coming up here in the regular meeting.
Okay.
So let's move to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission and look at the agenda and approve that. We should add that in new business, we should add taking up the subdivision decision tonight. I should have added that before. Any other additions or subtractions to the agenda or a motion to approve it with that addition?
So moved. Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, Jerry, all right. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, opposed? Okay, now, any public comment that is not related to this subdivision? Anyone out there? Okay. So let's move on to new business, and let's put the Velco approval for the subdivision, the decision for that, right here at the top. It would be subdivision 311. We looked at 16 waivers before. Bill, do we have the permit fee and the filing fee on record?
We have received the permit fee. We don't typically receive the, we get the filing fee along with the plat when it comes in.
Okay, that's right. And that final plat, if this is approved, do you have 90 days from today? Do you have a
Off the
date?
top of my
for that?
head, but if you give me 30 seconds, I'll have it for you.
Okay. So I think we have everything here. to make-
Wednesday, June 30th.
Doug and Sandy, did you hear that?
Yes, I
That's
did. Oh,
Okay.
it'll be in your hands long before then.
okay, good. Okay, any discussion? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve this subdivision as is presented and planned here for Velco.
Second. That's Dana.
Okay, thanks, Dana. Any other discussion or any discussion on this motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Sandy and Doug. 3 visits, but we made it through it.
Thank you. Thanks for your support and the neighbors as well.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your patience.
So long.
All right.
Okay, so we've got the next thing on the agenda, and I believe.
Barbara, just real quick, there are going to be a variety of forms that are gonna need your signature on them. I've got them filled in terms of dates and decisions, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are gonna need your signature to go along with completing this packet. And Howard, we forgot to ask him about the digital copy.
Yeah, and they're probably gone now, aren't they? I
They
guess
are.
10 years.
Just like that.
Yeah. What Bill is relating to is we really should get a digital copy of all these survey plats at this time, because our mapper that comes in once a year and takes all the survey plats and updates our maps really could use this. It's something that we really should be doing going forward. I think by just getting in touch with Sandy,
Yeah, I'll reach out to her. And
I think she'll follow up with it.
it'd be a great thing to add to our subdivision ordinance when we go through it and give suggestions, right?
Yeah, good idea, good idea. Yeah, so if there's no objection, we'll just direct Bill and or Howard to get back in touch with Velco about a digital copy. Any objection? Okay. Okay. So I see we invited John Zacconi to come speak to us. He is the head of the Vermont Transportation Board. Hi, John. And
Hello.
hello. He sent, glad you joined us a couple minutes early. Perfect timing.
So Bill prepared me, so give the credit to him.
Okay. So you sent around to municipalities around the state a letter a while back short while back about, I guess you wouldn't call it proliferation, but more and more instances where short airstrips, maybe helipads, are being proposed or actually going in across the state. We wanted to follow up on, just how numerous that is, how other towns are dealing with this. And I guess if you have any suggestions for a town like ours that doesn't have zoning, and if you've run across some examples of people who've done bylaws or ordinances in that case. So I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you. Yes, I've been with the Transportation Board for 8 or 9 years now. And my time started with when we were in a recession. And we saw very little activity during that time for applications for airstrips or helipads. And these are generally private facilities, landowners that want to be able to travel by air to their place. And then as the economy got better, starting in about 2015, we started seeing, I won't call a rash of them, we're Vermont, we're small, but we went basically from 1 every year or 2 to about 3 a year. And we continue at that pace where we haven't seen a slowdown. And every time we have seen one of these applications since that time, they've come in a community that has no land use regulations in order to be able to deal with their piece of the process. Because I want to explain the process to you all a little bit so you understand how this is supposed to work. But to finish on the background, so after seeing this time and time and time again, and seeing the neighbors basically have no input into the process, because when it gets to the state, the only thing by law we're allowed to look at is pretty much safety issues on getting up and down. Can the crafts take off and land safely? That's our primary job. And there's a little more nuance than that. I'll get into it in a minute. And all of the land use issues, which are the municipality's domain, are just getting a complete pass. And as a result, the permit process is not working the way that it was designed. So we decided at the Transportation Board that we would alert all of you out there. The communication you got was sent to every municipality in the state, just to make you aware of this and encourage you all to do what you can on the local level, because this is an issue that can affect everyone. While we've seen 3 a year or so in the past, half dozen years, I went back and looked at the statistics, and since the beginning of us dealing with and permitting these facilities, a full 1/3 of all Vermont municipalities have seen an application and the siting of an airstrip or a helipad. This is not a problem in search of a solution. If a full 1/3 and counting in Vermont can receive applications for these, to us, that tells us it can happen anywhere. And it's not just places like Stowe where you might expect to see something like that. A lot of them are very rural communities. A lot of this these days has got to do with the proliferation of wealth into the 1 or 2 or 5%, or where you want to put the cutoff. It's easy for them to afford these kinds of things now. And when it comes to a helipad, an airplane's a little different, but you don't need much land. I mean, you can land on top of a building in a busy downtown city area. They can take off and land pretty much from anywhere. So with that kind of as a background, I wanted to explain to you all how the law is designed. The law has 3 prongs when it comes to regulating helipads and airstrips. They're the same thing in terms of how you get permits for them. The first is the municipal look at it, and that's where the land use lies. And we at the board are not allowed by law to look into land use issues. We actually approached the governor's office last year, or maybe it's 2 years ago now, for land use regulation ability in the cases where the community does not have any. So we didn't want to double dip, if you guys had all the regulations you needed. But in order to be able to have that ability in times when it does not. And the governor wanted no part of that. And the board wanted no part of going to the legislature in opposition of the governor's office. So we elected to reach out to you all folks instead. So land use is what it is. Mostly it's dealt with in the zoning. You folks may not have zoning in Milton, but as my letter said to all of you folks, you can do an ordinance. You can even without zoning with a helipad or an airstrip, you can design an ordinance that covers these things. I am not an ordinance expert. I'm not here to tell you what you should put in an ordinance if you want to do one. Generally, towns get involved with their planning officials. You can work with the regional planning commissions, your own attorneys, however you want to put your stuff together. And I would encourage you to look into those things to do them. But so the three prongs are land use on the local level, safety on the state level, and we also look at what I call public utility, which is, does the facility serve the it's not the public good in law. I'm having a quick blank here for a second, but it's very much like the public good. Will the facility serve the public utility that way? And normally, if people can tell us that, DART will be able to use it, your first responders will be able to use it. If we have like a Irene situation where people are isolated and we have to bring aircraft in, we can take it over. As long as they agree to those things, and we've never had anybody say no, then you've sort of met the public good, if you will. And first responders love these things. We've never had an application where the first responders have come in and said, no, we don't think this is a good idea. You want to put a helipad in their area and they will jump at it. That's what we've learned. So you got land use on the local level, you got safety taking off and landing on the state level and serving the public utility. And the feds deal with the airspace. Can you go up and down in that airspace and not potentially run into another aircraft that happens to be in the airspace? And from the state level, the way our permitting process is designed is we won't even look or accept an application until it's had municipal approval. So you guys get the first whack at it. And if you say no, it goes no further because we will not even accept such an application. From that standpoint, however, where the law is clear that you have to have municipal approval, in a municipality that has no way to officially approve or disapprove, then the courts are very clear that you just punt. And we at the state have to take that as if there is municipal approval. It's not like you can just have the select board get together, and this has been tested in the courts, and just say, we don't want that there, so we disapprove. That doesn't fly. The courts will reject that. You have to have an actual mechanism on your books to be able to review these things in order to disapprove of one from a permitting standpoint. So what we're seeing, and I can tell you in each and every case, I think except for maybe one that I have seen, there has been no municipal review at all for these things. So, and we've cited them in areas that you would think in a village setting in rural towns that nobody would ever think of putting one of these things. But all we can look at once we get it is, does it meet the public utility? And your first responders will tell us it does. And can you get up and down safely? And that's just an engineering exercise. And it doesn't matter that you have 20 people living next to this thing. that are gonna see all kinds of interruptions into their lives and maybe affect their property values or whatever it is that the fact that the municipality has punted means none of that can get looked at. So it is with this in mind that we're not, now I want to also say that we are not anti helipad or airstrips. At the state, actually, we have wording on our books that we promote such a thing. But I think we can all agree that these things should be placed in areas where they should be placed, not just anywhere that anybody happens to want them. And what we're seeing is the latter here in the state of Vermont, not the former. So we encourage municipalities like yourselves to understand that this could come to you. Like I said, 1/3 of all towns in Vermont have already seen this. And now granted, some of those are, hospitals wanting them, and they're not all just people wanting to play in the sky, so to speak. There are real reasons that you should have these things in certain areas. But a lot of them are just people who wanted to be able to get in and out of their property by air as opposed to by land or by sea. So so that's what's going on. That's why we put the letter out. That's why I made myself available to any communities like yourself who wanted to get a little bit of a primer on this and understand why we think this way. And we're leaving it to you all. Because it's not our job to tell you what to do in your community. It's our job to alert you to what we see, and then you all can do whatever it is you feel you might want to do. So that's where we are. So we are encouraging communities to take a look at this, to debate it within their own community. It's a little tougher for you guys that don't have zoning. But like I said, there are ordinances. I'm just not an expert that way. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But I certainly am, I'm not the one that you should look for guidance on how to put such an ordinance together. But there certainly are experts at your disposal. If you don't have them in Milton, the Regional Planning Commission, or like I said, your town attorney or whoever you might get on board to be able to help you with such a thing. So that's pretty much my 5 minutes spiel, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the state have a list of preferred locations or locations that would be most appropriate?
No, that's not part of our charge. So we don't, I'm afraid. I mean, we have regulations on what they have to meet, just so you know, with an aircraft, one of the big things is what we call glide slope. There's a ratio from the ground, if you will, to taking off. And there can't be any impediments in the way that would make it unsafe. So one of the things that we require is somebody to do an analysis of the type of craft that are being asked to use the facility and what's around it. And we're like a lot of permitting organizations. When you get to yes, you get to the how, which is, what are the time? We can regulate the times of flights, we making sure nobody's landing there at 4 a.m. and waking everybody up. We have some ability to do that kind of thing. And if there are trees in the way, we don't necessarily say no, we tell you have to take the trees down. And then we have an inspection happen afterwards to make sure any impediments that have been identified are taken down before we completely sign off on the facility. So we do look very hard at all of the safety issues, which is, like I said, is our primary bailiwick on what we look at. And again, meeting the public utility is another thing. If there are, we work with Green Mountain Power. If there's power lines around, that's not necessarily something that will stop them. But if you've ever seen the orange balls that they put on utility lines, which are there because there may be low-flying aircraft in the area, and that kind of thing. So a lot of ways, because you all on the municipal level are punting, we're becoming a yes, but how board, rather than having the process being looked at as, is it a good idea or a bad idea to have it in this particular area? Because your bailiwick is really the good or bad idea. Our bailiwick is safety.
Norm, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you for coming down. I found your presentation very helpful and very easy to understand. You must have done this a lot. Um,
I've been around a little bit. Yes, thank you.
Okay. I wonder, do you have, or does your office have, your board, or do you know of any resources which have model ordinances? Or on the other hand, do you keep on file the ordinances that have been enacted in any municipalities? So-
The answer to that is no, unfortunately. In fact, the letter that we sent you all, and I understand from Bill that he at least sent it to you all, is we started that exercise with the idea of putting some model ordinances or model zoning in to give to you all, and saying, here's kind of a first run, take it or leave it, or alter it or whatever. And we put a committee together involving professionals from regional planning commissions and local planners, as well as VLCT. And we got us all together, and it was the group's wish actually not to do that. We discussed it, but they felt that it's not enough of a one size fits all, because every place is unique and different, that it would be better to just outline the types of tools that you can use if you want to place them and put your own ordinance or zoning bylaws together. So we thought about doing that, Norm, but it never got to the end zone. Or what came out was what you all got. And like I said, I don't remember, I may even be wrong saying there was one. Every time we see one, there's no process on the local level. So I can't even point to you saying, we worked with this town and they had a great process at the beginning and brought it to us. I don't even have any examples of that. And I've never tried to reach out to all the communities to find out if they do have any. Your regional planning commissions might be able to help that way. They keep a tab on everyone. And I know Charlie Baker, and I'm actually Shelburne's rep on the Regional Planning Commission here in Chittenden County. I live in Shelburne. They're good folk, and they keep up with their municipalities. And if you reach out, they may be able to help you. And if we got none here in Chittenden County, they work with their partners around the rest of the state with the regional planning commissions, and they may be able to do a little reach out for you and see if they can find anything that works. Like I said, yours is tough. Zoning is a little easier because there are things within it that you can use, as we pointed out in the letter to you. There's a number of ways. Ordinances, if you got no zoning, you got to cut an ordinance from scratch. And the one that I think I remember having zoning connected to it was certainly in a place that had zoning. It was not just in an ordinance. I'm not aware of any standalone ordinance that might exist. You can even look outside if you understand. A place like the Hamptons, for instance, this is a big issue in New York, in a place that's wealthy like that and has people come in. But I can tell you, New York doesn't even look at these things on the state level. If you don't look at it on the local level, then it's the Wild West out there, and you can land and take off anything you want anywhere, as long as the locals will let you, because the state is hands off. So if there is any regulations over in the state of New York, it's on the local level. And I'm not saying the Hamptons has anything, but I'm using them as an example of a place. Vail, Colorado would probably be another place that you would expect something like this to happen. But I've never gone to the point of reaching out to places like that.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
In those cases where a municipality has an ordinance and let's say it prohibits, the ordinance prohibits somehow whatever wants to be done. Is there some place in the state in the state's process where you look at the ordinance to determine whether it meets any specific requirements, or is it, as long as there's an ordinance, as far as the state's concerned, it's prohibited?
Yeah, no, we don't take a look at it. You have your own process. If the applicant doesn't like the answer they get, they can take that to court. And, you know, you guys can battle it out on the local level, and then we will only take it. So if you say no, like I said, we don't get involved at all. We tell them, sorry, you know, you haven't got local municipal approval. This is very clear in state law. Sorry, we can't help you. Now, if you give them a no and they think they should have a yes, they would take you to court. And we wouldn't, again, deal with it at all until it came out of court. If they won, obviously, they can come to us because your ordinance has been overruled. If they lose, then I would imagine that's where it stays. So we have no authority to look at what you do on the local level and scrutinize it, if you will. That's not our role. The state law is very clear that we provide you that autonomy. And like I said, we don't even get involved unless you guys either punt, which is what we're seeing, or you say yes. Now, I also want to caution you all, because as much as we want you to look at things, understand too that a helipad in particular, not so much an airstrip, but a helipad, although an airstrip can be a very good economic development tool. You know, if you have an area where you've got designated for growth, and that's where you want businesses to go, you know, the ability to fly in by helicopter from time to time, if not regularly, can be something that a corporation might find very attractive or feel they need. So that's why we ask you all, we're not trying to tell you this is a bad thing, outlaw them. It's understand your community and where these things may be good, because an outright ban can actually bite you in the behind. If all of a sudden you got some big player that wants to come in and this is what they need, and you have an ordinance on the books that won't let them, now they'll go look someplace else. So you do have to take a look at the full picture here when you get into this, and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And I would imagine, and like I said, I'm not an ordinance expert, that depending on how the other tools you have in town, that, you know, ordinances can be crafted to allow things in certain areas and things and not in certain areas. You know, zoning does that with commercial and, you know, non-commercial and that kind of thing. So I'd imagine an ordinance can be crafted as long as the person knows what they're doing in a way that can deal with those questions.
John, I think in your letter, you also mentioned using town plans to accomplish some of this. Would that have any teeth for you if we cited some language in our town plan?
Oh, when you say teeth for me, what do you mean by that?
Well, if we were objecting to a certain application that was coming through because of some language we had in the town plan, would that mean anything to your board in looking at their application?
You know, we'd have to look at it in terms of municipal approval. And that would be a struggle. You would tell us. We actually ask. I would go to Bill or your town manager or someone in town when I get an application, and we say, is there municipal approval for this? And we let you guys tell us whether or not you have given this municipal approval, or whether you have to punt it. And we ask that you give us some sort of communication in writing. So if we get a communication from a municipality that says this facility does not have municipal approval, then that's where we'll stop. Now, if the applicant argues against that, then we will start to have the conversation. We need to find out who's given us the line and who's not. And if there's a legal dispute over whether your approval is good or bad, then that's going to be a fight that you're going to have with the applicant, or the applicant's going to have to take action against you, if you will. And we have seen this in order to tell us at the state who's right, whether you're right in telling us that you have the ability to not do this, or whether they're right in telling us the ability you don't have the right. We don't make that call. We'll tell them, you got a dispute with the town. You know, you're not ready to come here because you got a dispute with the town. go work out your dispute with the town and then come back to us. And that's generally how we handle those things.
Norm,
Yes, thank you, Barb. I think what Barbara was asking, if we sent you, somebody comes and for either one, an airstrip or a helipad, and we write to you and it says, this does not conform with the town plan.
Mhm.
How do you interpret that? Because a town plan, we have no enforcement
Yeah,
provisions. We don't have zoning, but somebody's put it down in a attempted to do it in an area that we find doesn't conform with our town plan.
yeah. Okay, I think I get the question a little better now. I don't have an answer for you on that because
That's no fun.
It's never happened to us, so I've never had to deal with it. And what I would do there is I would consult my own attorney, because I'm not an attorney, I'm a bureaucrat. And we'd have to discuss that. I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you there.
You said earlier that you had, may I follow up, Barbara?
Go ahead.
May I follow up, Barbara? Thank you. You said that you have some form that you ask the town whether it's been approved or not.
It's not a form, and part of the application process, get a little deeper in the weeds, is if you're an applicant, you work with the Agency of Transportation first. We're not aviation experts. We don't have pilots on the board and engineers. They have pilots and engineers and a whole aviation section at the Agency of Transportation. I understand the board is actually different than the Agency of Transportation. So as part of the application process, they have to put forward, they being the applicant, have to put forward and prove to the agency who sort of does the first take on this, that municipal approval has been met. And the agents, if they get something, the agency can look into it itself, or they can just pass it on to us. And then it becomes, if there's a question, I would imagine it would become a case-by-case process. We've done a little investigations before where I'd call either Bill or your town manager, who's, I'm afraid I don't know who your town manager is, otherwise I'd mention him or her by name. We would reach out. We don't have a form that you fill out. We get something from the agency, and generally they will ask first for a letter. They'll tell the applicant, and if you get municipal approval, and they'll say either yes or no, and then they'll be told, well, if it's yes, go to the town and get us a letter that says you have approval. Or if the answer is they don't have any way to approve us, then their job is to go to the town and get a letter saying they don't have any way to approve us. State, go ahead and do your thing. So that is what would happen. There's no form, but there is communication. The applicant would have to come to either the zoning office or the office in order to get such a letter.
So it's the applicant who fills out the form and not the town.
Yes.
Thank you.
any other questions for John? Okay,
All right. Last thing
thank
I just
you.
want to leave you with is I told you that 1/3 of the communities in Vermont have had one of these. They're not all active. We keep track of them. And when I say that they've had them, I mean, they've had them at some time. Understand, like with a helipad, generally it's the person who owns the land at the time that wants to use a helicopter. And when that person passes away or sells the property, the next owner doesn't always want any such thing. So as a result, it just goes fallow. Now we can permit, and we do permit, and we ask whether or not you want the permit to run with your time owning the property or in perpetuity with the property. And the applicant's allowed to make that request of us. We get requests for both. So some of these, even if they're not active, can become active later because there's a permit that runs with the property. Others just run with the individual, and others, even if they run with the property, we'll never see one again because no second owner will ever want to have a helicopter. So I'm not trying to tell you that there are active helipads in 1/3 of all Vermont communities. We have permitted them at some point in time in 1/3 of all the communities, but not all of them are active. And a good, probably 40% of them or so are not active anymore. And that's probably how that runs.
Looks like we have a couple more questions. Norm and then Sherman.
Well, I've kind of hogged it, so Sherman, go ahead and I'll
Okay,
follow
Norm,
up.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just want to be sure of one thing. You've, your board has granted 70, between 75 and 80 permits for helipads and or landing strips. And did I understand you to say that none of the towns that in which you have approved one or the other of these facilities has a separate ordinance regulating them, that there's not?
No, what I said is, since I have been involved in the past 8 or 9 years,
Okay.
we have only seen maybe one. All the rest of them, I really couldn't tell you. That was before my time. I know what and that's what my board understand. They weren't there way back in the day either. They're like you guys, you know, they're the board present, not the board past. And what we have seen since 2015 is that we have not seen any application come in a community that has a way to regulate it, except for maybe once.
Do you recall the town that did have the ordinance?
Offhand, no. As I recall, all they had to do was go to the zoning administrator and understand that whether or not it was on a what's the zoning term of art?
Permitted
not an
use?
acquired use. God, as I get older, my brain wigs out on me occasionally. It's a zoning term. It's because I'm not a zoner, so pardon me. It's conditional use. The zoning administrator just made an administrative decision that it qualified as a conditional use.
So they had zoning.
So they had zoning, and the zoning administrator signed off on it, but it never went to hearing, because if the zoning administrator can sign off on administratively on it, then again, the neighbors never get a say. And in this case, the neighbors never got a say. All it was an administrative decision in the office of a zoning administrator without any of the neighbors ever knowing this was going on. So even if you have zoning and the zoning can cover it, it depends on what your zoning is like and what it says. What we prefer to see here at the state, at least I'm only speaking for my board, I'm not speaking for anybody else, is that the process is that you come before your zoning board of directors, and they have to have a permit hearing. So the neighbors get notified, it's public, anybody who wants to come down, and you as a community can vet this thing. I don't know enough about ordinances to know how they really run and whether there's a hearing or not, but at least there's a public process. And the public process, if a select board, somebody would have to grant the ordinance, which means it would go up on an agenda. People could find out, at least it's done out in the open rather. And I'm not trying to give this town any unnecessary crap. That's their process. And, it was administrative in an office. And that's not the kind of process that my board is looking for. They would like to see a very out in the sunshine way of the communities look at these things.
Okay, let's do one more question, Sherman.
Yeah, my question is more either terminology or definition, depending on how you look at it. If someone has significant acreage, 50 or more acres, and most of it's open, and they occasionally land their helicopter there, not necessarily even in the same location. At what point, is that considered helipad or?
Oh yeah, if you're going to take off in a land aircraft on state land, no matter what town it's in, you have to get permission from us to do that. The feds do allow some one-offs. You know, if for instance, if you're one of these, like the Stowe Mountain Resort, and they're doing a big expansion, and for 2 days, they have to have helicopters come in to bring big steel beams or something.
Yeah.
The feds give them a pass for that. And as a result, we don't make them come to us for a permit for that. But federal law is clear, and we use that as our guideline, that if you're going to take off and land aircraft on any kind of a regular basis, then you need a permit. So that's what we're talking about. And if you got 50 acres and you're going to land right in the middle, so you really got no neighbors around, and we saw something like this in the town of Lincoln as an example, and nobody cared. It was out in the woods, and there was nobody really around, and this person could come and go, and it was not impacting anybody. And it's the only hearing I can ever remember we've had where there were no neighbors. Nobody came. No, nobody. It was just us, because even though the town was aware of it, we notify the neighbors. There's rules that we have to do when it comes to notifying people. But with that one, nobody cared. So Sherman, I can look at that and say there's no reason that person should ever have been denied, locally, state level, feds, whatever. But we've also seen ones literally right in the middle of the village, you know, right next to a state route, and with neighbors that, you know, the craft's going to fly over, you know, and almost be in your bedroom. You know, that's a different animal. So it really depends on the application and what it's for and where it is, which is why, again, we stress we're not trying to tell you guys to make an ordinance or zoning rules that outlaw these things.
Right.
Just understand what they are and what their impacts are, and put together good local ordinances or zoning that deals with what they are.
So based on that, I assume there doesn't have to be a physical helipad, just a place where you land.
Yes, most of these things are just in a little grass field. You know, we have rules, they have to keep it clear, so there's backwash, you know, when you get the rotor going, and it doesn't suck stuff up and make it fly everywhere. And I mean, that's our bailiwick, that's the safety element of it. And so if you're going to have one, there's certain things that you have to do. But no, you don't need to build anything. We have had people build them, you know, little asphalt pads where they can land, but that's not necessary. And airstrips too. We have grass airstrips. They don't have to be runways that are paved. So and most of them on the small levels are not.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so there you go. I appreciate you guys having me. I really do. I hope I've at least educated you all a little bit on how this works, and then we'll just leave it to you guys, and we'll take it from there. If you need anything else from me, just have Bill contact me. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. He's got my email address if any of you want to just email me individual questions, or you know anybody else who wants to, just reach out. I'm happy to communicate with anybody who wants to.
Okay. Well,
Thank
thank you. Thank you, especially for your time tonight.
Very good, no problem. Have a good one.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm inclined maybe just to let that information just sift through, percolate through, and maybe take it up next time. Unless you
Sure.
folks want to discuss it tonight.
Works for me.
Okay, we'll come back to that one next meeting.
We're just gonna punt. I'm sorry.
The only thing that I'll say, Barbara, is that I think that there should be to John's, Mr. Zacconi's presentation, that which should behoove us to look at that just like we've done with other areas of the municipal plan. And so it's probably worth exploring and seeing if we can find a couple of municipal ordinances someplace else, maybe in a large metropolitan area, that would serve as a guide that we could use, or maybe the planning commission, or the regional planning commission could give us some resources. So I don't know if that can be achieved for the next meeting, but if we're going to have a discussion, we should be discussing something rather than just theory. I think John gave us a pretty good introductory overview and background of what could be at stake. So,
Yeah. Working at the Regional Planning Commission and speaking to some colleagues, there's not much out there in Vermont. So I think we are going to have to look out of state, as he suggested. And maybe look for some ordinances. I'll try to find some time to do that between now and the next meeting. If anyone else wants to do some digging, welcome to have you join in that as well.
okay, thanks, Barbara.
Okay, yeah, good suggestion.
Good, yeah, good point, Dana.
So next on the agenda, just wanted to give you an update on the Pocket Park. Through the Regional Planning Commission, I'm working with the town on the municipal planning grant. So we're putting together an offer for bids to do some land surveying in the area. We've had a meeting. Mary Ashcroft and I sat down with representatives of Green Mountain Power and a consultant that's doing their relicensing. Just to talk about some of these property issues, whether there was a survey and there's not, whether the town will be entering in some sort of a MOA, memorandum of agreement with Green Mountain Power. So those discussions are ongoing, and I'm putting together two groups of stakeholders, one with a focus on recreation and the other focusing on the historical elements there at the falls. So those stakeholders will include, they'll include some town employees, some state affiliated people, like with recreation, fish and wildlife. And in fact, fish and wildlife, there's an individual there who's working on a paddling trail for the Otter Creek and would be including this section. That's his hopes. And he's in the early stages of putting that trail together, which is going to run from Mount Tabor to Lake Champlain. So there's going to be a few stretches there, but he's very interested in this one. So people like that in the stakeholder group, some neighbors, GMP wants to be involved with both stakeholder groups. And then, we'll get some other, we've got Trout Unlimited, Rutland County Audubon, and people like that. So I'll be sitting down with the recreation group first, probably, and then the historical group. And so I've got pretty much the recreation group pulled together. If there is anyone here on the town commission that wants to join either one of those groups, let me know. And what I'm thinking is, maybe at most 2 meetings, we'll go through the list of suggestions that we all came up with after the site visit, and see what folks think of those suggestions, see if they want to add some to those, and then we'll compile those and run those by the public, and then run those by a couple of consultants that we'll hire toward the end of this process. Is that all clear? So if anyone wants to be part of this, there probably will be daytime meetings because of the people involved, but that may change. Mary Beth, can I kick it over to you for the next item on the agenda? You you came forward with an idea, something that you came across through your work or something like that, regarding conservation commissions? You're
Can't hear.
muted.
I think you're muted.
Can't hear her. We can't hear you.
There's one in every crowd, Mary Beth.
Mary Beth, try to test.
It's not on our end, Bill, is it?
No,
No, this is a micro-esque problem.
I think she's calling us.
she's gonna
I
try.
think it's a safe assumption, yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
No feedback?
No.
All right, great. Sorry about that. The only problem is I can hear myself, so I'm trying to. Okay, is that better? You guys are good? Can
That's
you still
good.
hear me? Okay, perfect. So I wanted to talk to you guys about conservation commissions in general. So I saw a grant opportunity come up, and it was for small grant, a small grant for things like tree planting, things for towns, and it just got me thinking about the park, the pocket park that we're working on, and the timing may not line up very well because the grant is in May, so this might be something that we would look into next year as we're working on the park. But so there's some towns have conservation commissions, so I did a little digging on what exactly they do, and there's a couple different pieces. So any town can form a conservation commission. Either the whole town can vote, like on town meeting day, or the select board can vote to form one. And typically, so a conservation commission can accept land donations, so for recreation or conservation purposes, or can form can purchase land, with the select board support. So I thought it would work well with the pocket park in general, but I don't know much about conservation commissions. I don't know if you guys, I know certain towns around us have them, like Shrewsbury. I know people on the conservation commission there. And I know that they've done some work with developing wildlife corridors, so getting donations to, I know that they worked on a project with getting state land, getting the state to purchase land in the town to form a wildlife corridor. So I just wanted to get your general idea. Do you think it might be something worth having in Vermont? You know, could open up grant opportunities for helping us develop the park, you know, the pocket park, or you know, planting trees along Route 4 potentially. You know, we talked about the street calming, street beautification in Center Rutland. So anyway, I can send along information to you guys in the meantime if this is something you think might be worth looking into. There's a state law that goes through what exactly conservation commissions can do. And then there's a state association of conservation commissions, and that's who has the grant that I saw. And they do, you know, trainings on wildlife conservation and recreation and trails. And so I guess I'll open it up to see if anyone is interested in pursuing it. And if so, I can provide more information to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, why don't you send that out? And it sounds
Okay.
like, it sounds like for some grants, you need to have a conservation commission in town to apply.
Yes, to get the grant through them. And these are, they call it a tiny grant. It's like $600 a year. And I think last year 8 different towns got grants, and it's things like, you know, putting up trail signs and interpretive things. So like for the pocket park, it might help with historical interpretation items, planting trees, you know, maintenance for trails, things like that. You know, the same with Northwood Park. So kind of conservation commissions kind of have pieces of like recreation committees and planning commission. Barbara, you mentioned that sometimes energy committees can be part of, that could be one of the roles of conservation commissions.
Yeah, some small towns combine the two.
Mm-hmm.
They see some some parallels between them. And yeah, it does work out for some.
Well, if we're the Stormwater Commission, we might as well be the Conservation Commission as well.
I was thinking the same thing.
Well,
I'd agree with
Maybe you
that.
can move the stormwater over to the. Yeah.
it
I don't know
sounds-
if I want to totally volunteer to be chair of a conservation commission, but I guess since I brought it up, you know, I would at least probably be on it, you know, so.
I think before we get that far, we ought to just take a look at the materials you send us and get some idea of, you know, how far the town gets involved and what the time commitments are and all that kind of thing. And before we start volunteering,
Sure.
Yeah, and keep in
before I
mind,
start nominating people like Dana and Barbara. And
Careful, Norman.
the usual suspects, yeah. Yeah, and keep in mind that we have been talking about, you know, that we need to kind of figure out what we want to propose to the select board about an energy committee, about following up on our energy plan. So maybe keeping both of those in mind as you go through Mary Beth's materials and prepare for the next meeting.
The other thing, Barbara, and I think we had discussed this with respect to the Energy Commission, it would be, I think, most beneficial if we expanded the reach of volunteers from the community to serve on some of these other commissions, so that we could have someone from either or both the Planning Commission and the Select Board, but that group could be made up of other volunteer townspeople, and then get them involved in the work that we're doing on behalf of the town. So,
Yeah, and maybe youth as well, some of the students in the school. You know, a club or something from,
Maybe the town recreation committee would be interested in at least knowing what we're talking about and possibly participating.
that's true. And I think that's, other than Mike Rowe, I think that's just the select board, but I'll look into that.
It's my impression also.
Yeah, the recreation committee is Sharon and Joe at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we don't have a real robust citizen committee structure in town. So I guess that could be part of our persuasion or our argument to the select board,
Mhm.
that we could certainly build that up a little bit and take some of the load off the select board members.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay,
I'm sorry, so Bill, only select board members are the recreation committee, isn't Mike? I don't remember his last.
Well, Mike as the department head, obviously, will attend the meetings, but like, there's committees for a variety of things. There's building and rec and fire and police and water and sewer. There's all sorts of committees, and there are at least 2 select board members on each of those committees. They are select board committees. So they discuss topics in those meetings, and then they bring recommendations back to the full board for review and discussion.
Okay, thank
yeah,
you.
they're essentially subcommittees of the select board, really.
So
And
this
same
would,
as-
if we had a conservation commission, it would, a piece of it could be the recreation, or that would be a big part of it. So that would make sense that that committee would be involved. Mhm.
Yeah, and the same is true with the energy committee. That's part of the select board. It's select board members. With a pretty narrow vision. I think the only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but what they mostly do is deal with applications for energy projects, right?
Yeah, there's that, you mean the energy committee specifically?
Yeah,
Yeah, that committee is the newest one, and that was formed really to take on a majority of the discussions around the proposed solar panel projects that we've been approached about for Northwood Park. So that committee was formed to take the meetings and review the materials and have all those discussions and then bring recommendations to the board without having those in-depth conversations during an actual board meeting.
right.
Yeah.
Right, and looking specifically at the impacts on the town and such, as
Right, yeah.
opposed to, more conservation in town, or, should we be looking at other renewables and the like, the kind of a narrow focus.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Mary Beth, if you would share those materials you have.
Sure.
Yep, and any links that you have, that would be great.
Okay. All right.
Glad you could join us.
I'm not sure what was up with my, yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, just a couple more things. I thought I'd mention that the apartment complex developer, the Flatley Group, or
Yeah,
Flatley something.
John Flatley Company, and it was Doug Richardson who was there.
Yeah,
Same one who talked to us.
they were at the select board meeting the other night, pretty much the same presentation that they gave us. They are proceeding. They expect their Act 250 application to be done in about 90 days. So Mary Ashcroft, the chair of the select board now, has been asking department heads, Rutland Town, to start thinking about the impacts of this development and what might be the most appropriate questions and comments for the Act 250 application, which we'll see as well, since we're a party to that. So that's still out there, and they just seem as positive and energetic about that project as ever. So I think it is coming.
And yeah, and they said they have retained a local engineering firm and a local attorney to help them with the process. And Mary said she's seen surveying tape pop up in the field out there. So sounds like some additional work is being done. So those are all really positive signs.
Yeah, and I think they mentioned to us they expect 10 full-time positions once,
Yep.
if they are constructed. And during construction, 150 jobs for contractors of all sorts, and some of those would continue, of course, like electricians or plumbers or you know, and the like, to maintain the apartments. So a big impact all the way around. Norm, do you have a question?
I was just going to ask, have you heard anything about the redevelopment of the Rutland Mall? Anything further? There was something a week or so or 2 weeks ago in the paper that.
Yeah. There was a discussion of the select board meeting with Zamias group. And they have some letters of intent or letters of interest from retailers, restaurants, maybe a hotel. They have like 10 or more of those. So they sounded pretty hopeful that something was going to get going up there. They gave the select board a 90-day window too to come back and give them an update on that. But
The select board gave them, or they gave the select board?
they gave us, they said they would, the select board said, you know, when will you know more? And they said, you know, give us 90 days.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay. Yeah. Well, that was pretty much in the paper. I was just wondering if there was anything more, but that, you know,
But what was in the paper stretched the conversation as to what was had during the meeting. So that was, yeah, that was about all that was said. And they did try to push them for a little more, but he says they told us that they're under non-disclosure agreements with everybody. So there was nothing more they could tell us.
They said something about they have some interest from, I think it's retailers that don't have another presence in Vermont. This would be their first time.
Yeah, I heard that too. I remember seeing that too. Yeah, that's encouraging.
So yeah, and the same end of town. So that's kind of handy if there's going to be all that kind of development, that it kind of feeds off each other. Okay, anyone else have anything to bring to the group? Okay, let's move down to the minutes from, when were they, March 11th? And then we can wrap up this meeting.
Move to approve the minutes of March 11th.
I'll second.
Okay,
There's one piece, item 4 on the first page. It says, Mr. Hunter moved to approve the preliminary plat, and Mr. Hunter seconded the motion.
Good man.
I don't think you can do that, Sherman.
I did. You weren't here.
Oh, that's what happens when I miss a meeting. People take all kinds of liberties. Is that right?
does anyone remember seconding that motion?
It wasn't me. I wasn't there.
Oh, Bill, we might
I
have
can
to
go
have you
back-
go back to the tape.
I'll go back to the video and find out, yeah.
I have a, I was actually present and I'm not shown as present.
I'm sorry, Jerry, I didn't hear you.
I said I was present at the last meeting, Norm, and I'm not shown as being present.
Yeah, you were
Oh,
here. You were there. Anything else, folks?
You may, Barbara, have to wait till next meeting since Bill's gonna check the tape and figure that out. So you may want to table the minutes until next meeting.
Okay.
Unless Bill can find the answer.
If Bill finds it. I don't know. Either way.
Technically, I don't think,
If you want to have a discussion amongst yourselves for a moment, I can go back to my tape. Just hang on.
sounds
It might have
good.
been me. I think it might have been me that did that. I think I might have seconded that.
You weren't here.
No, I was here.
that's what he
I
just
told-
said. He's not shown as there, as here, but
That's why he didn't show up as seconded.
That's right.
So if there's a little time, Mary Beth, do you have an Apple computer? Or iPad?
Normally I'm on an Apple computer, but I'm using my different computer, laptop.
Oh,
I
okay.
normally use like headphones.
Okay, it's just that I had the problem that you have now, but it's on an Apple computer. That's all. That's why I was asking.
I think if I get my headphones and put them in, it would work, but for some reason the speaker isn't.
That happens too.
So I had one quick thing to add. I think that it's very possible I may not be at the next meeting. And I think Howard would remember this. So I just wanted to throw out there that as far as the helipad thing goes, I think it's pretty important that we do at least look at that. I know everybody pretty much feels that way, and I know there's a long way to go, but when this whole solar and wind thing started back before everybody else's time, not only was I lashed out against by the zoning, by the town administrator at the time, but also the chair of the select board kind of just said, don't worry about it when we were talking about wind and solar. And within a year or two, it was on our backs. So it is important that we at least follow through. If everybody feels strongly, we ought to do it fairly soon. That's all, just a heads up.
I very much agree with that. We shouldn't let this wait for finding what's out there and available. If we can't find anything shortly, we should move along and
do the
just
best.
design our own, make our own rules.
I agree. We kind of were in the very similar situation with the solar. No one really knew what direction to go. We weren't getting a lot of help, but it is important that we do it. Not that this will be as important as that was, but if we feel strongly enough about it, we ought to forge forward. I think Andy's right.
Yeah. I mean,
this
yeah,
doesn't. No, go ahead, Barbara.
I was just gonna say the impact would be smaller for something like these helipads, but no less vocal.
Right. I agree.
Norm made the motion. Sherman seconded it.
Sorry.
Thanks, Bill. Norm, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just going to second what Jerry said. This doesn't have, the helipads and landing strips don't have the same impact as a huge solar installation, but they could potentially have a significant impact on neighbors. And so I think it is worth giving it attention and not kicking it down the road. I think Jerry's completely right.
Yeah, and he had a good point about it being like an economic development kind of, asset as well. So just add that. Okay, back to the minutes. And that was a good point, and we'll get back to this next meeting if it takes us a couple, but we'll hash through this. And get something back to the select board.
So I would like to amend my motion, Barbara, to state to accept the minutes as corrected.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Thank you, Jerry.
okay, any discussion, any more discussion? All those in favor? Say aye
I,
or wave,
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
okay. Opposed? Okay, now I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I was just gonna mention the, about the Energy Committee.
Okay,
Yeah. I think, we're gonna not talk about it till next meeting, but if you could take a look at the energy plan and just, give it the few pages, I forgot was 68 to 72 or something like that. And take a look at it. Some of it overlaps. And just in your own mind, pick out the 2 or 3 items that you think may be the most important. And that'll give us some place to begin a discussion.
yeah, and for that and the
I can't hear
Conservation
you.
Commission. I think I'm,
We
I can hear you. Yeah.
I can
Okay.
hear.
I
okay,
can
so.
hear you.
So for the Energy Committee, the Conservation Commission, and for the helipad issue, maybe, subcommittees might be the answer. But let's talk with fresh minds next time on what the best approaches will be.
I don't know what happened to my sound, but I can't hear you.
Well, it's a good thing it's the end of the meeting, Norm. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second it.
Adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
I.
Aye.
Aye.
No one can be opposed.